Hey everyone, thanks for coming today. My name is Laura Helmuth. I'm the editor-in-chief at Scientific American. Scientific American is a magazine that's 175 years old. We just celebrated our anniversary. And we publish experts writing about their own fields. We publish science writers, professional journalists who are writing about reported pieces about things that are happening in science. And then we also publish a lot of opinion pieces by various experts that often have to do with policy, decision making, sustainability, things like that. And one of the ways that this is relevant to the bigger issues of how good decisions get made is we're one of the kind of leading platforms for people who know what they're talking about to talk about what they know and share their opinions about what science says, what the evidence says about the best decisions that need to be made about the most important decisions. So it's an exciting place to work. It's a good career, and I'll be happy to answer questions about how to get into science journalism. I got there, I have a Ph.D. In cognitive neuroscience. So after I finished my Ph.D., I went to the UC Santa Cruz program. They have a program in science communication that trains people with some science background how to be journalists. And it's a 9-month program. It's a really good one. The other ones that are good are New York University and MIT. And there's a few other programs if you're interested in going through a program to do this. And so the training, having some science background and then having some journalism training, both of those things together kind of put you in a good position to start writing professionally as a journalist. And you can do this, it's very hard to get a full-time job, unfortunately, but you can try your hand at freelancing. And a good way to get started or to kind of understand more about what this career is like is to read a website called The Open Notebook. That one, and then there's also an organization called the National Association of Science Writers, NASW.org. So go to either of those websites, and both of them have really good, so you're interested in starting this profession sections. And you can read about how people who are in the business now got into the business, what are some things to know, some kind of de-jargonizing, so you just understand what the language is and how people talk about things in their field. So there are, in the people in both Open Notebook and NASW, it's very overlapping populations, but they're very helpful, very generous about sharing tips about how to get into this work and how to pitch stories, how to get your stories published. So for me, I started out, just a quick bio, started out after I got my PhD and went to the Santa Cruz program. I did a bunch of internships and then got a job at Science Magazine in their news section, which is the kind of the front half of the book that is written by journalists. And from there, I went to become an editor at Smithsonian Magazine, Slate Magazine, Smithsonian is a magazine, it's a monthly magazine, it's very visual, it's not for people who are specifically interested in science, but who are kind of lifelong learners and are also interested in history and arts and travel. And science is one of the things that magazine covers. And then from there I went to Slate Magazine, which is an opinion website. So I got to, in writing and editing opinions are a lot of fun because you basically help people talk about what they really think about things and to be persuasive in smart and fair ways. From Slate, I went to National Geographic. I was just there briefly and then went to the Washington Post, where I was a news editor for 4 years during most of the Trump administration. It was a very hectic time. I learned a lot about the news business. And I've been at Scientific American since April of this year. So I've worked at places that have very different audiences. So if you're interested in any of those publications, when we get to the discussion section, I can tell you more about what it's like, working in opinion, working in magazines, working in news. They're all, kind of related. They're all similar professions, but there's very different specialties for each of those outlets. And a lot of the things that all of us in science writing have learned is, how to say this? So science, the people who do science writing learned a lot of lessons that other journalists are just now trying to figure out, like the problems of false balance and avoiding, amplifying misinformation. Unfortunately, political journalists didn't figure this out in time. They are figuring it out, but I think they could learn a lot from science journalists. We've been covering climate change, been covering evolution versus creationism, a lot of things that have been the subject in vaccines, obviously, have been the subject of a lot of misinformation. So we've kind of been out in the front in terms of journalists for saying, here's what's true, here's what's not, instead of just saying, this side says this side says that. So there's a lot of expertise involved. One of the nice things about any career you get into is that as your expertise builds, you get better at your job, and that's very rewarding. And I know, when you're starting out, it seems like every single one of these jobs you're thinking about or hearing about today are, mysterious and strange, and how do people ever do it? But you just do it, and you get better as you go along. You decide, if it fits you well. If it doesn't, you can detour to another career, which is easy for me to say because I'm gainfully employed. But it's very hard to get jobs in anything right now, but it is doable. And I think all of the professions that are represented in this discussion today are, they're all work that's meaningful and that is interesting and that will continue to grow. In any of these professions, you're not going to be doing it for a couple of years and decide, okay, I'm bored, I'm done. It'll keep being challenging and keep kind of creating new, interesting things where you can kind of develop your own skills, your own knowledge base as you go along. So thanks for thinking about all these things. They're meaningful work, they're important work, and I'm glad you're all exploring some of these options for careers. I think, a lot of when it comes to specifically science writing, the skills that really matter are language, storytelling, asking good questions, continuing to ask good questions, even if you're confused, and recognizing that when something's confusing, that means it's time to just find out more and just keep digging. That being a journalist is very compatible with being a researcher. It's the same sorts of skills. You want to know how the world works. There are certain ways to find it out. There's ways to evaluate evidence, and so a lot of the skills you learn as a scientist are very complementary. But in addition to the things you do as a researcher, the nice thing is you just want to read a lot and write when you can, even if it's just for your own benefit. It's one of these skills the more you exercise it, the better you get at it. And even whether or not you become a career writer, it's something that should be part of any job you do. So if either today or in a few years you find yourself in a position where you have some expertise, where there's something that's in the news, especially that you're able to speak about, please do consider writing opinion pieces to share what you know. There are a lot of people who do write opinion pieces who don't necessarily know what they're talking about, and so it's really important to amplify the voices of people who do have some expertise and do have some knowledge and some evidence to back up their views. So please keep that in the back of your mind as something that you should just kind of make part of your regular process, is sharing with the public the information you have that they need to know. Anyhow, thanks. I'm looking forward to talking with all of you. Bye.